Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to It's Rainmaking Time. This is Kim Greenhouse. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Joseph DeLeo. He was the first director of meteorology at the cable TV Weather Channel. He has over 30 years' experience in professional meteorology. He's a co-chief meteorologist, along with Joe Bastardi, at the new venture Weatherbell at weatherbell.com, which we're going to talk about today. He is also known for his papers on climate change, questioning and looking at the details and facts related to climate change, questioning global warming. He is a man who's into the details. He also owns and runs a very well-known blog called icecap.us. A couple of years ago, we had him on our first show related to climate, and that is where I became interested in a new perspective on climate, and it was Joe DeLeo's help, along with Dr. Tim Ball and another gentleman named Robert Felix, who helped me understand the facts about climate change. And he is here today because I'm very interested in talking about how weather affects industry and agriculture and some of the other concerns that we need to be talking about with regard to weather. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Joe DeLeo to It's Rainmaking Time. Good morning.
Good morning, Kim. Thank you.
Let's first talk about your new venture, Weatherbell, at weatherbell.com, and what you're doing there.
Well, it's been a dream of Joe Bastardi and myself for many years that someday, if the cards played out right, that we'd get to work together. We went down parallel paths in our careers, and both of us have had over 30 years' experience in the field. And we think alike. We come up at the weather and climate from the data as opposed to theory and models. And we try to learn from the data, learn from experience, very much data-driven, empirical kind of approaches. And many times over the years, even before we knew each other, always be very surprised. And I was part of a hedge fund, a partner in a hedge fund with another meteorologist, and we discuss a pattern and reasons why we think that pattern was going to change and what effect it would have on energy or agriculture. And then we'd read Joe's blog, and he'd be talking about the same thing. And we said, is he listening in on our phone conversation here? How did he know that? But we tend to think a lot. We think a lot on climate as well. We see, because we look at data, that the data that suggests the changes that we've experienced are real, natural, and cyclical, and predictable. And we intend to use that in our business.
So talk about what Weatherbell does.
Well, we provide information to four major constituents, one being just the weather hobbyists, the people that just like to talk about the weather and read other people's opinions. And they've been following Joe Bastardi when he was with AccuWeather, and myself when I was Dr. Dewpoint on Intellicast. And we both produced blogs, weather blogs, and they were big fans of those blogs, and they learned a lot about weather and climate from it. So they are among our first clients on Weatherbell, and they come to our site, and Joe and I post at least one new blog every day talking about some aspect of the weather.
One new blog or one new write-up?
One new write-up.
Okay.
And it may have to do with the change in the weather pattern. It has to do with what we expect for the hurricane season. In some cases, the drought in Texas, the problems they're having, and similar problems they're having in France. My first blog post on Weatherbell was on May 11th, and I said, boy, we're in for a spring with lots of flooding and tornadoes. And one of Joe's early blogs did similar things. And of course, that has certainly proven true. In April, we set a record for any given month in history for the number of tornadoes, and two major outbreaks, and one in May. Wasn't quite as active as April, but it was deadly as well, like April. And over 500 deaths so far due to tornadoes. And certainly the flooding has been a big issue all along the Ohio, Mississippi River, and now the Missouri River. And the flooding in the lower Mississippi Valley has been worse than any time since 1927, a very significant flood year.
Is it a lot of work, or are you using a computer program to be able to deduce what the weather's going to be in different areas? Are there only certain areas that you focus on? How does it work?
Well, we look at global patterns, and the factors that we look at have global implications, whether they be El Nino or La Nina, the decadal oscillations in the Pacific and the Atlantic, the Pacific decadal oscillation, the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation. These all have global effects, or at least hemispheric effects. And by knowing the states of those variables and the others that we look at, like the solar activity, the wind that blows at 10 to 12 miles over the tropical Pacific that oscillates back and forth from west to east every 13 months or so affects the way in which the oceans and the sun affect the patterns. We look at other factors, the lunar phase, and these factors in combination point toward certain years that were similar, and that we use those years as guides for what the weather is likely to be, and this works quite well.
It is said that there are, not in your circles, but in other research circles, that there are two kinds of weather. One is organic weather, which is the earth doing what it's doing, which is cyclical and what you're describing. But in the last 25 years, there's been an effort all over the world to impact the weather synthetically through chemical spraying of the upper atmospheres, which has impacted and altered weather. Now, I know that Weatherbell does not get into this, but I hope, and I'm saying this because I hope at some point Weatherbell will look at it, even though you won't be able to do the predictions because some of the weather is impacted synthetically, even if a lot of it is organic. That will be where the X factor is. There will be some aspects that if you're in the organic weather realm, you'll be able to predict very close to what's happening or spot on a lot of times. But if it's synthetic weather, that's the X factor of the whole process. Do you know what I mean?
It is that, and we don't know very much about how much we're affecting the high atmosphere with intentionally or unintentionally with jet aircraft and high-flying aircraft and the like. We do know that man does have an effect on the local climate at the ground level with our urbanization, as our population went from 1.5 to almost 7 billion people on the planet since 1900. That certainly makes a difference. In and around our urban centers, heat is built up, accumulated, and that affects the temperatures that we measure and the energy we use, certainly in the summer, but it may actually help reduce the energy we use in the winter in cold weather patterns. But that's very real, these local factors. The global